Welcome back to Hockey Talks. I'm Carl. It's Dave. Toronto fans, rejoice. You have a brand new captain in Auston Matthews. John Tavares passed over his captaincy earlier this week to Auston Matthews, who will be, I believe, the 56th captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Sounds about right. And you know what? I'm just looking forward to hearing people call him Captain Underpants.
Yeah.
Let me know if you know what that means.
Yeah. Very excited, obviously.
It's good for Toronto.
It's good for Toronto. It's a change. It is a change, and that's what they wanted to do. Although they didn't do anything in the free agency or anything like that.
There's a lot of people. I actually seen the Beaverton article that was talking about how this really just covers up the fact that they really made no changes.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just.
It'll be interesting to see, though. It's a big title. I wonder how much it's going to change things for Auston. I know he tries pretty hard, as is. Yeah. So having to see, though, maybe it'll help a little bit. But I'm more interested in thinking about what that has, the impact it has on Johnny.
Yeah. Well, you watch the ceremony, I guess you could call it, of him passing off the sea. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people can do that. He shows a lot of class.
Not as much profession.
No, absolutely. He shows a lot of class, right? Yeah. He'll show nothing but class. He's just that kind of a guy. But you have to think it's very, very cringeworthy to know that you have to give up your captaincy to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like you've kind of been demoted. I mean,
to somebody younger and better looking, right?
All game. They say he was all game for it and wanted it. And Auston Matthews is a great fit for it, right? If you were to give it to anybody, you'd probably rather give it to him. But you couldn't help think that there's a little bit of tension in between that and then having to stand up there and pass it over in this whole ceremony and shake his hand. I mean, good class by Johnny, but
I mean, what do you guys think? I personally think that the reason why he was maybe a little awkward, some would say. Some people probably wouldn't pick up on anything and just say, he's being a good guy about it and he doesn't really care. But I also think that maybe there's a point to it where he's coming up on the end of his career and he's, been captain for, I think, 2 teams over 5 years, captains on 2 teams. And he has an overtime winner in the playoffs in each one of those, which is a pretty unique thing to have.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's though, he's coming up on the end of his career, and maybe that's kind of going through his head as well. He's kind of handing down the reins to a younger him, right? Is probably maybe what he's thinking.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he's coming close to the end of his career now, and I think he's starting to realize it. I mean, his performance is still pretty good, right, on the ice, right? And as far as I know, he was a great leader in the locker room, and people loved having him as a leader. But yeah, Auston Matthews just makes more sense right now. He's the face of the franchise, obviously, right? And he's the one who puts up a bunch of goals, and he's very talkative on the bench with his teammates. I think it's a good move to make him captain. Whether this changes a whole lot from John Tavares to Auston Matthews, we'll see. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference whether between the 2 leaders, right? Maybe some of it, but we'll see when the time comes.
Do you think him having the C would make him more obligated to say things that he previously hasn't said?
Yeah, maybe.
Like during practices, during games, maybe he's bitten his tongue, but now since he has the C, it's kind of a step up and almost like a promotion, and now he's got to manage the players a little bit better.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that would be something that could change, the chemistry of the team?
Yeah, I think so. I think he can step up and really play this role to the way he wants it, right? He voices his opinions on the bench. You see it all the time, right? But I think this gives him a little more leniency and to what he can say, what he can drive home, right, to everybody, right? And he's control of this now. Him, right? He'll have the full support of John and all his teammates, right? And
it's almost like
he's driving right now.
Yeah, and the way I just had a way of thinking about it, and that way is previously, he speaks his mind and it's good. He gets it out there, but it's because he says some things he's not captain, and he always has the captain to kind of reel him back in.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds you of a friend who wants to get into a fight, and then they've got somebody holding the guy, right, and preventing him from fighting. It's like no, but now instead of being that guy running off and fighting, well, now Matthews is going to be that guy preventing it, right?
Yeah.
So he'll have to Yeah, it's like
Control his
second think
emotions.
everything he says, but choose his words wisely, and I think it'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah. And not to say he doesn't do that stuff already, right?
No,
I
we
mean,
don't know.
I'm sure he's done some of that stuff already, but yeah, he's going to play a bigger role than what he's currently been doing right now. A little bit bigger, anyways. I'm sure he's been doing some of that stuff, but yeah, it'll be a bit of a change for him and the Leafs organization as they move forward with the same core and group into this season.
And speaking of change, there's actually a question I was wanting to ask you, and this is just something I found online, but the entire league, the entire NHL is actually changing very rapidly, but very slowly as well. So I have a question for you. How many players with the top 10 point scores per decade is what we're going for? How many of those players in the 60s were Canadian?
The top 10 point scorers.
Yeah, per decade.
Per
so
decade.
the 60s.
For the 60s.
How many of those top 10 point scorers were Canadian?
Wow, okay.
Sorry, out of 10.
Out of 10.
Out of 10.
Out of 10, okay. I'm going to say probably 7 or 8.
10.
10. All 10. Okay.
Now 70s.
Yeah, 70s. I feel like it's going to start getting... Actually, let's go 10 again.
That's correct.
Yeah.
80s.
80s. Let's go 8, probably.
8.
Yeah.
Yeah. 90s?
90s. Oh, 90s is probably going to be about that 6 mark.
9.
9.
Yeah,
oh,
went higher.
Okay.
And then the 2000s.
Shows what I know.
The 2000s is when it gets good.
The 2000s, okay. Now I feel like the 2000s have a lot more American talent coming through. So 2000s, I feel like that's going to be probably like 5 or 4.
5.
5, yeah. Okay, yeah.
2010s?
2010s, we're going to go back up to about 7.
4.
4, it's getting less and less every year. Okay.
And the 2020s.
And the 2020s, 3.
You weren't supposed to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so speaking of change throughout the league, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And what I mean is, in the beginning, was NHL that much more smaller of a sport? In the 60s, well, obviously it was, but like the amount of rapid change we've had, especially since the 2000s, and being Canadians, I'm excited to see the growth and all these other I guess players coming in and being good players to get in the top point scores. Yeah. Would it, like, down the road, is this going to like maybe wash out some of the talent if it continues growing, or do you just think it's going to continually get more and more competitive?
Oh, it's going to get more and more competitive. I think the more that you involve other nations and other countries and people get more adapted to hockey throughout the world in the places that even don't have hockey, right? You're going to get more and more people trying to compete to get into this NHL, right? Yeah. I'm sure they got the league in Europe and stuff like that, but there's going to be more and more competition all the time, like you've seen in those years, right? For starting with the original 6, there's only a few teams and between pretty much the East Coast, right here, but now it's expanded all the way to the West Coast, all the way through the States. They're playing games globally, right? It's just expanding more and more and more, right? You're seeing players from Australia and all over the world coming through here. So, yeah, I think it's going to get way more competitive, and you're going to start seeing that decline of who's scoring goals, right? Because you're going to get a large contribution from a variety of different players, right? It's not just strictly Canadians and Americans anymore. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more competitive coming to try to fill those roster spots and the goal scoring and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's good to see, frankly. I think that the expansion happens first, and then what shortly follows thereafter is a little bit of weakening throughout just the average. Like, it's like a dilution a little bit. Yeah. But then you give it enough time, and the more you expand and the more, it's like you go from 32, 33 teams in the NHL, and you increase that by a little bit. But then what's also happening at the same time is you're opening the sport up overseas, so you're bringing on a lot more talent over here and allowing people to cheer for teams and then getting their kids enrolled into the sports. Then 15, 20 years later, you're able to fill those spots no problem, right? With perfectly fine athletes, we'll say. It just makes you think, like, in the future, how many more McDavids are there going to be? Right? Speaking of that, actually, he just got married, I think, too.
He did, yeah. He just got married. I'm not sure where, but...
It was funny. I seen the picture of him and his lovely wife now walking down the aisle. And then shortly thereafter, I seen a video that was the locker room with the Edmonton Oilers just after their Game 7 loss.
Yeah,
it was very quiet. Yeah, and it was the part too where Connor McDavid was called out for that trophy, and he went his own.
No, there was no way he was showing his face up there. Yeah,
but hopefully they can use that as fuel for the next year, which I think it's the silver lining of those types of opportunities when you miss out is let it burn a hole in your heart and then try and fill it up.
Absolutely, and they still got a contract to deal with here with Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah.
They still got to figure out his contract, which ends in the following year, right?
Yeah.
After this current year, his contract ends, and there hasn't really been much talk. They say they're getting things figured out, but they still got to figure out this contract.
I guess they have a couple more contracts to figure out, too.
Absolutely. They have a couple more contracts that the St. Louis Blues have sent offer sheets to Dylan Holloway and Philip Broadberg. They accepted the offer sheets, and now Edmonton has until August 20th to either match those offer sheets, otherwise they become St. Louis Blues and they get compensation in draft picks and stuff like that. But this rarely happens. You don't see this happening very often. I think
it being two, right? That's what makes it rare.
Well,
just the overall thing.
The overall offer sheet thing. You don't see this very often, right? Often teams will have that mutual respect to you don't take my free agents, I won't take yours kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
They have a private deal, and they just that stuff doesn't happen. But St. Louis Blues sent an offer sheet to Dylan Holloway and Philip Broadberg, and they have August 20th to match that. I think they should happen more often. I think it'd be. I don't think I heard somebody say that they're not. They do this because they want to build their team. They shouldn't be worried about what the other team
about
is
hurt
doing.
feelings.
Hurt feelings,
for sure.
Yeah. If you don't like it, well, that's too bad.
Because you're not thinking objectively, right? You're thinking emotionally.
Yeah, and you're thinking you got to build your team. You got to focus on your team and get to where you want your team, not somebody else's.
But I also think, the other side of that would be if I do this to them, or if I don't do this to them, maybe they'll give me something in the future or not do it to me in the future. But I agree. It's like what you have to think about is the short term. I need to build my team over top of the long term, because by then, long term, you're not going to have a very good team and you're not going to be there much longer.
But if you need somebody that fits your team and you have an option to get them, why not go for them? I think it would add a lot more excitement to the NHL and to the league, right? If they just send out offer sheets and they put pressure on that other team's like, okay, well, we got to get these guys signed.
But why two at the same time, though? You think that's a tactic? Do you think they're not expecting to get both of them? That maybe one?
Maybe. I mean, maybe. That could very well be. Maybe they just see both of them fitting in their lineup very well, and they were both restricted free agents, right? They had an offer, obviously, from Edmonton that they both declined. Yeah. So now St. Louis is trying to get them, and we'll see if Edmonton counters.
Yeah, I do believe, for a restricted free agent, if anybody doesn't know, that's kind of the definition of it, is if they sign a contract and they go three consecutive years, or accrued 3 years with that team, get a contract and deny it, then they become a restricted free agent, with which other team can put an offer in, but then the current team you're on can either accept it or deny it. Yeah. So that'll be interesting, though, because, like I say, I don't necessarily think the Blues maybe wanted both, but maybe just one. Yeah. And they know that if they ask for one, they won't get it. Yeah. Right? So maybe there's a bit of a tactic there.
Yeah, they might just get one guy. They might get both. But it puts a little pressure on the Edmonton Oilers to get something done, right? I mean, they're both high draft guys that came around, I think, the first and second round. Yeah. And that's something you don't really want to give up, right? So. Well,
there was also that coaching change on Edmonton Oilers.
That happened midway last year. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. Who's that dirty guy that's coming on board for the Oilers?
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I can't remember his name.
Bowman? The GM. Yeah, Stan Bowman.
Yeah, I wonder if that was anything to do with that. Stick it to him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could. I mean, ultimately the players decided not to sign a contract.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I mean. Is like I wonder if it's anything like, yeah, we ain't going through you.
Maybe
guys.
it wasn't a good contract. Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what happens. But I think teams should do that a lot more. Throw offer sheets out. See what happens.
Yeah.
Right? You're fighting for your team. Nobody else's.
Well,
Sure, people are going to be mad at you, but
it's interesting. It's interesting though to hear the politics behind the scenes as to why we make these current decisions that we're making. You know, especially as a hockey team and as hockey players. I always had this weird thought as a kid, you know, and now too. If you could do something like guarantee getting a prime team put together and win a Stanley Cup, and everybody, let's say everybody, no matter who you are, is paid, I don't know, $2 million, $3 million, $2 million, whatever, and you're all paid, let's say, equally or whatever, you know. You can get some real good players on board that want to win a Stanley Cup if you can get a lot of people to agree to it. Mm-hmm. And you just don't see that happening.
No,
right?
You don't at all.
I don't. Partly is because obviously these guys are making a lot more money than that, some of them, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also the agents getting involved and things. But I'm curious because I think, I don't know if it's fact, but I'd heard something that Crosby actually accepted less money when he was playing in order to keep some other people aboard.
Yeah. People
was that true?
Malkin the board, yeah.
Yeah. So it's odd. I don't hear that happening a lot with some other players.
Yeah, the older guys sometimes, if you want to keep the core alive, right? I mean, they were playing together like most of their NHL career together, right? So,
and you want them to succeed,
sure,
like absolutely. Give them an extra $1 million, or you know, it's pennies to them, right? But that kind of makes you think. It's like what's really happening, and a lot of it are probably the agents, but at the same time, they can really only play for 20 years, and their bodies are, you know, pretty worn out. So they want to make as much as they can that time.
Yeah.
Build a castle or something, you know.
Yeah. Get as much as you can, and then later on, like I'm sure Crosby has made enough money to cut back his wage a little bit.
Yeah. Well, he can definitely take some time and play some Fortnite or something, you know.
Yeah, play some Fortnite. Yeah.
Oh, did you say Marner? Never mind.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, that's another topic to discuss for another time.
Yeah.
But that is all the time we have today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will see you next week. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful evening.
Go Captain Underpants.